Hi, and welcome to Strata Media Paint and the exciting world of digital special effects. My name is Roy Neal, and I've been with this project since its beginning, so I'm here to help you get started using Media Paint and adding special effects to your video productions. Media Paint is an essential tool for any desktop video producer, because with it you can animate, rotoscope, or composite, and add special effects to your videos. During this tape, we will be using several tutorial files which are located on the Strata Media Paint CD. First off, I'd like to show you how to open a new document. By going to the File menu and choosing New, Media Paint brings up a new dialog. In this dialog, we show you your files in your directory, and we let you choose a QuickTime movie that you'd like to paint on. When you choose a QuickTime movie, we display the preview, and we automatically adjust the size of your document at the bottom here using the radio buttons. When you click the Open button, Media Paint will open that movie and place it in a new document on the movie layer. Media Paint uses layers to create a non-destructive editing environment. That is, you can apply paint to your document, but it sits on the paint layer above your movie. Selecting the paintbrush from the tool palette and applying paint, you can see what I mean. As I drag the eraser through my paint, you can still see the video underneath. All the paint is on a separate layer above the video. By employing a technique called Live Alpha, Media Paint creates and modifies and maintains your alpha channel automatically while you edit. The movie layer is non-modifiable, that is, you cannot edit it. You can, however, sample from it or perform operations against it, but the results of those operations will always be placed on top of the paint layer. For instance, if I take the fill bucket and fill against the movie layer, I haven't actually modified the movie layer. Let me go back to the paint layer, and you'll see that when I select using shrink, I've selected the results of that fill operation, and they have not modified the movie layer, even though I performed that fill against the movie layer. Again, this reinforces our non-destructive editing technique. Media Paint's interface provides an extensive feature set for creating special effects. Over here is our tool palette, and in it we have our basic standard painting tools, which include selection tools, an eraser, anti-alias text, and anti-alias shape tools. While below, we have a scrolling list of specialized plug-in tools. These tools allow you to create specialized effects such as burn, dodge, or even particle tools. To the right is the sample palette. It displays the current colors, patterns, and even the selected brush. To the right of that is the color palette. Here you can choose colors, edit them, even create and edit palettes or switch between the palettes you have loaded in your project at the time. Above your document, we see the Movie Controls palette. The Movie Controls palette displays the current time that you're working, the transport controls for moving to the beginning, the end of your project, stepping between frames, and even a play button to preview your work within Media Paint. Below, we have a shuttle that allows you to move between the beginning and the end of your project. To the left of that is a jog shuttle to let you play your project at various speeds. The frames per second pop-up lets you control how fast playback occurs within Media Paint. To control how fast your QuickTime movie plays, you set your frames per second when you save your new QuickTime movie. Below the frames per second, we have the auto copy controls. Auto copy is a very special feature within Media Paint. It allows you to automatically copy what you paint from frame to frame so that you don't have to do it manually. For example, if I wanted to create a graphic that drew itself over time, I could do it very easily by selecting the paintbrush that I wanted to use, Moving over to the Tools palette, selecting the Paintbrush tool, moving down to the Color palette, choose the color you like. Then with Auto Copy New enabled, I simply begin painting and stepping between frames. For this example, I'll be using the right and left arrow keys to move between frames, instead of the transport controls in the Movie Control palette. As I apply my paint, I use the right arrow key to step to the next frame. And as you can see, Media Paint is automatically copying the paint that I've applied on previous frames forward as I move. There's even a record button in the movie controls that allows you to automatically record your painting actions live while the movie plays, so you don't need to manually step forward. Again, pressing the play button will give you an instant preview of your project within Media Paint. So we've covered the basics in Media Paint, creating a new document, working with layers, showing you the interface, and now we're ready to move on. In this section, I'll be taking you through Tutorial 1. We'll be working with some new features, specifically Stencil Paint. Stencil Paint's this neat thing that lets you take a QuickTime movie or a picture and apply it to your document like you would ordinary paint. Here, let me show you what I mean. Here we have two movies. One is a fully rendered version. The other is a wireframe rendering of the same movie. I'll be opening up this wireframe version to paint on, and I'll be opening up this rendered version to apply as Stencil Paint. Using the File menu, I'll choose Open to open my saved project from the desktop. Media Paint opens my project with the movie that I have saved in the movie layer. As you can see, it's the wireframe rendering of the Pharaoh I showed you earlier. Now I'll move to the File menu and choose Import so that I can import an image into my stencil layer. First thing I have to do is click on this radio button that says Stencil so that Media Paint knows I want to import my movie into the stencil layer and not into the movie layer. Then I simply locate the movie I want to load and click Import. Media Paint then loads up the file and highlights the stencil icon so that I can use it. This is how you access Stencil Paint. It works just like any other color in your color palette. By clicking on the S icon, you can see in the sample palette that my Stencil Paint selection is reflected as my current paint selection. By moving up to the Brush palette and choosing a brush, I can then begin applying my Stencil Paint over my movie. As you can see, I'm applying the fully rendered version of the Pharaoh that I showed you earlier. Stencil Paint is unique. When auto-copying, Media Paint automatically updates your Stencil Paint so that its image comes from the current frame on your stencil movie. Media Paint advances your stencil movie and the background movie whenever you advance through your document. So as you can see, Stencil Paint is a very powerful feature which can be used for anything from removing wires to taking people out of a scene to creating free-form video composites. So as you can see, Media Paint offers some very powerful techniques for adding special effects to your video production. We're ready to move now to Tutorial 2. And in this tutorial, we'll be working with some advanced tools that are called particle tools. And I think you'll really like them, so let's dig right in. From the Open dialog, I'm going to choose Lesson 2 and open it up. My project opens, and you can see I've imported a picked file of a car. It doesn't change from frame to frame, even though we do move from frame to frame. What I'm going to be doing here is adding some of that squiggly text you see in the commercials all the time. And in order to do that, artists usually have to go in a frame at a time using white paint and draw these arrows on every frame to get them to jiggle. But that's really tedious, so we're not going to do it that way. Instead, what we're going to do is use this new tool that we have called Squiggle. What Squiggle does is it automatically squiggles your paint for you so that you don't have to go back and generate it by hand on every frame. As you can see, Media Paint automatically squiggles these arrows for me while I'm recording, saving me a lot of time. Particle tools are really neat because they not only save you a lot of time, but you can go in and customize them and get them to act any way you want. For instance, if I bring up the squiggle settings dialog, you have a preview area here that lets you try out your settings before you commit them. You can come down here and adjust your settings. For instance, speed, the amount the lines squiggle, and even whether they change color over time. So for my text that's going to change color over time, I want it to change to blue from green. Now when I rewind and hit record, you'll see that the paint that I apply begins to change color after a certain amount of frames. After I stop recording, I'll hit the delete key to kill my active particles and hit the rewind key so that I can preview what I've done so far. Particle tools allow you to create dynamic effects quickly and easily. Media Paint ships with 4 particle tools: Squiggle, Baby Boom, Pixie Dust, and Spin Out. Although all particle tools look different, they all function identically. Now we're going to explore some more practical applications of Media Paint's effects on a full video production. First, I'd like to show you the finished product so that you can see what it looks like after the effects have been applied, and then I'll go through and show you how I did some of the effects in there. First, you'll see some statues materialize behind the soldier using electricity and a fade-in process. And then you'll see Isis, the princess, begin to beam in. The soldier will fire some shots at her, which will merely bounce off, and then she'll take out her vengeance on him. Let me close this movie and open up the third tutorial so that we can begin by painting some laser blasts from the soldier to Isis. In this short segment, you see the soldier fire his gun at Isis. The technique I use for creating laser bolts is to use the anti-alias line tool to mark the path on which I'd like the bolt to travel. I do that by selecting white for my frame color, and then I navigate to the position in the movie at which the laser bolt is fired. On this frame, I draw the line from the gun barrel to Isis's chest, the target. Once my line is in there, I select Auto Copy New and step forward a few frames to apply that line on all the frames in which the bolt is seen. After I have the line copied, on all the frames I need, I turn off autocopy and I pick up my eraser tool. Now I'm going to travel back to the beginning of the laser bolt and erase those portions of the line that don't make sense. For instance, in the beginning, when the soldier fires, you're just going to see a little bit of the laser bolt coming out of the gun. And then on the next frame, you're going to see it move. So I'm going to erase those portions of the segment to create an animated line effect. Once that's accomplished, I'm going to use the Fine Brush tool in my scrolling list of plugins, bring up its settings, and adjust its pressure down to 20%. Pressure controls how transparent the paint is when you apply it. 100 is completely opaque, while 0 is completely transparent. Now I'm going to go down to the color palette and choose the color orange. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit on my document so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to cover up the perimeter of that white bolt with orange. Move forward to the next frame and do the same thing. And so forth, until we've covered all frames of the bolt. After I've created an orange border surrounding the laser bolt, then I select a smaller paintbrush from the dots palette here, and I choose the color white. Again, I zoom in so I can see, and I highlight the center of that bolt so that it appears bright. Stepping to the next frame, I repeat the process on the remaining bolts. Now with that done, the only step left is to create the flash when the bolt strikes ISIS. For that task, I've created a special brush palette called Flashes. This palette contains two brushes. One is multicolored, while the other is solid colored. For this instance, I'm going to be using the multicolored brush, so I'm going to select it, but I'm also going to choose Paint As Is from the command menu in the brush palette. This command forces Media Paint to apply the brush exactly as it was when it was captured, rather than colorizing it with the current colors you have selected. For this example, we'll be using the standard flat brush located in your basic set of tools here in the tool palette. Now I'm going to navigate to the frame at which the bolt first strikes ISIS so that I can apply the first flash. As I step to the next frame, I will again apply the same flash, only this time I'm going to use the marquee tool to select that flash so that I can manipulate it. I'm going to choose Draw from Center rather than Draw from Corner, because when I choose Resize Free from the Arrange menu, I want to be able to resize my flash proportionately. With that done, I'll click off of the selection to commit the resize, and again to commit the selection. And we're done. We've explored some simple techniques and created some really cool effects, and now in our next project we're going to use some of those same techniques, but we're going to create some more organic effects like electricity. In our final tutorial, we'll be putting the finishing touches on our video project, so let's get started. In the Open dialog, I'm going to select our fourth lesson project and open it. In this segment, we see ISIS preparing to blast the soldier with a bolt of electricity. So what we're going to do is create that buildup of electricity between her hands and then release it when they come together. Creating electricity is a subtle effect and has to be approached with care. If you don't get it just right, it won't look right, and people will know that you've tried to put on a special effect. So what I'm going to do is select a soft, fuzzy brush here in the dots palette, and then move to the bottom of the screen and choose the base blue that I'd like for the background of my electricity. After I've done that, I'll double-click the Fine Brush tool and make sure that my settings are where I want them for this particular effect. I'm going to want the background to be fairly opaque, so I'm going to move the pressure up to 60%. Then I'll move up and basically just draw a squiggly line that moves between ISIS's two hands. Move to the next frame, do the same, and so forth, varying each squiggle on each frame. And on this final frame, her hands meet and the charge is discharged. Rewinding to the beginning, I'll now choose a smaller brush from the dots palette, such as this small little fuzzy one here. I'll go to the color palette and choose white for my fill color. And I'll again use the Fine Brush tool and zoom in and draw the fine electricity that goes along with this blue band. Step to the next frame and continue. Now that we've added the electricity, we need to go and put some flashes in right when she's about ready to discharge. I've gone ahead and added some frames of flashes already. Let me zoom out so you can see things a little clearer. So these frames have already been painted on so that it won't take up a lot of time. But on this frame, I'm going to show you how to add a flash. Let's switch back to our flashes palette so that we have our flash brushes. First thing I'm going to do is fill the document with some white to kind of overpower the camera. To do that, I'll take the square tool and fill the whole screen with white paint. Then I'll double-click on the marquee in the tool palette to select all that paint. Using the process menu and the fade out filter, I can fade out that white paint. I'm going to fade it by 33%, so everything seems really washed out. Then I'll deselect my paint and choose my big flash here in my flash palette. Selecting white for the paint and the standard flat brush, I'll go to where ISIS is just about ready to discharge and apply that flash. As you can see, on the following frames, the flash continues and fades out. I'll click play and give you a preview of what we've done. So now that we've finished our tutorials, why don't we take a look at the final movie once again. So let's go to the File menu and choose Open so we can open our finished movie. After MediaPaint opens the movie, I'm going to choose Presentation Mode from the Movie menu so that MediaPaint plays it back for me against a black background. Both of the actors in this film were filmed against a blue screen background and then composited against a 3D background, which was rendered in Strata Studio Pro. This was done using a technique called chroma key, which can be done in media paint. Here we see the laser bolt that you've added in its final form and the lightning effects that we added in their final form. This final effect where the soldier disappears was accomplished using stencil paint. We've covered a lot of ground, so now it's time to rewind this tape and practice these techniques until you feel comfortable with them. Once you are, then it's time to open up the media paint CD, grab some sample movies, and paint away.